Okay, welcome back to our podcast. My name is Trinity Thomas. I'm a third year elementary education student from Zebulon, North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Kennedy Roberts. I am a sophomore elementary and special education major from Haymarket, Virginia.
Hi, my name is Asia Salaam. I'm a sophomore elementary education major from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hi, my name is Nylin. I'm a sophomore elementary education major from Los Angeles, California.
Okay, so we're going to start off strong today on categories for learning targets, and those categories are knowledge targets, reasoning targets, performance skill targets, product targets, and disposition targets. Also thrown in is procedural knowledge. So knowledge targets in the textbook are defined as they represent the factual information, procedural knowledge, and conceptual understanding that support each discipline. And then we have reasoning targets. They specify thought processes students are to learn to do well within a range of subjects. Performance skill is where a demonstration or physical skill-based performance is in the heart of the learning. Product targets is describe learning in terms of artifacts where creation of a product is the focus of the learning target. Disposition targets are referred to attitudes, motivations, and interests that affect students' approaches to learning. And then procedural knowledge is knowing how to execute a protocol or carry out a series of steps. So to basically sum up all of the learning targets, it's just different categories for students that they put together to get where they need to be academically, like the factual part, and then the sorry, the knowing how to execute things in a series of steps and attitudes and motivations, interests, those all feed into how a student learns. So yeah.
Okay, that was great, Trinity. I really liked your points that you made. So I'm going to be talking about comparing classification and synthesis and how they are good for our students to learn those skills so that they can be stronger in all subjects. So comparing classification and synthesis are three essential high-order thinking skills that support deep learning. Comparing involves noticing similarities and differences. Classification means grouping items or ideas by shared attributes, so things that are similar, and then synthesis is combining pieces of knowledge to create a new understanding. So coming up with a new idea based off things you already know. So effective assessment for these skills goes beyond recall. And like I know a lot of times in school, like our teachers want us to memorize things and like just to regurgitate them, but like we want our students to think deeper and be able to think critically about things. So we can use Venn diagrams, sorting tasks, concept maps, performance tasks, and rubrics to reveal student thinking. So we want them to think above what's normal, and we want to use different types of assessments, such as the Venn diagrams or concept maps, so that they know how to organize information. Thoughtful formative checks such as exit tickets and guided sorts, which they can do with a partner, provides a richer summative task. And then there's also we can do projects and comparative essays so that they're practicing all different types of skills. And this will help teachers see whether or not their students can analyze, organize, and create with the content they learn rather than just memorize facts. And then to reflect on this, as teachers, it's important for our students to learn how to compare, sort, and put ideas together. These skills help students to think clearly, remember what they learned, and use the knowledge in new situations. When students can compare, they notice important differences and similarities. When they classify, they organize information so it's easier to find and use. When they synthesize, they combine ideas to make something new or explain something in their own words. We shouldn't rely on multiple choice tests to check these skills. Use quick, low pressure checks like exit tickets that ask for two similarities and one difference because we don't want to ask them a bunch of questions, like 35 questions. We just want to ask them enough so that we can see if they know it or not. And then we can do sorting activities and then concept maps, like I said before. Also, we can use deeper tasks like projects and comparative essays to let students show how they think. And then clear rubrics are important so that we can have show our students what the clear expectations are for the project or essay so that they can know exactly what they need to have. And then we can start by modeling so we can show them how we want it done and then they model it back and show us the skill that they're learning. We can give guided practice to let students work on their own. And then these practices will help the skills stick in their mind because when they're actually actively practicing something, it helps them remember better than if we're just giving them like a multiple choice test. And then teaching these skills also supports fairness. When we teach comparing, classifying, and synthesizing directly and use examples that connect to students' lives, more students get access to critical thinking skills. A few small plan checks each week will help teachers see who needs more support and will grow more independent thinkers over time. So yeah.
Thank you, Kennedy, for that. When I was reading chapter 3, what really stuck out to me was how much assessments depend on having a clear understanding of what students are supposed to be learning in the first place. If the goals aren't clear, then the assessments don't really show us anything useful. I connected with this because I've been in classes where I feel unsure of what the teacher actually wanted, and it made assignments stressful and confusing. This chapter showed me that clarity isn't just for the teacher, it makes the whole process more fair and more supportive for students too. Something else that really stuck with me was how different types of learning require different ways of showing what you know. The book explained that sometimes students are learning information, sometimes they are practicing reasoning, sometimes they are performing skills, and sometimes they're creating something new. That really made me think about how important it is to match the right assessment to the right kind of learning. I realized if we don't make that connection, we might think students aren't learning when they really are. We just aren't measuring it in the right way. I also found it helpful how the chapter talked about breaking down larger targets into smaller steps that students can actually understand. A big goal can feel overwhelming or too abstract, but when it's unpacked into smaller parts, it becomes more approachable. For example, instead of just telling students to write a good essay, we could guide them through smaller goals like writing a clear introduction, using evidence, or crafting a strong conclusion. Thinking about it in ways this way helps students focus on what success looks like in smaller pieces. What I liked the most, though, was the idea of making sure students actually understand and connect with the learning goals. Just writing them on the board isn't enough. The chapter suggested finding ways to make the targets feel real through examples, conversations, and modeling. I thought about how, as a future teacher, I want my students to feel ownership over their learning and not just see goals as rules for the teacher. If they know what the end goal looks like and feel like they're a part of the process, they're more likely to stay motivated and confident in themselves.
Wow, Asia, that was really, really good. So I feel like, okay, so like why should we like really focus on communication? Because I feel like even the clearest learning targets don't matter if students really don't understand them. Like, why am I telling a kid like, oh, the learning target of today is to learn why we're trying to learn why we're like learning about clocks and we're trying to learn why the hour hand is longer than the minute hand. And they're like, what does that even mean? Assessment becomes fair and effective only when students know like the true destination. And I feel like, we should really show the target in its original form and not really hide the actual standard. Let students kind of see it so that they know where it's coming from. I feel like when I was in elementary school and I saw like SLOs and things like that, I was really like confused. Like, what am I looking at, and what is this vocabulary? I didn't even know like what was the point of it. But I feel like once a teacher kind of helped me to understand, like, okay, I'm telling you that at the end of this lesson, I want you to know what I don't know, like what y equals mx plus b is. I want you to know that by the end of this. And you want to kind of translate it in like a student friendly language. Like I'm telling you, like standards are like completely full of just like big vocabulary that some kids don't really understand. So when it comes to breaking it down to them, we kind of want to use words that, they use in their everyday language. Using models and examples as well might help a lot. And just check for understanding, just trying to make sure that they understand like what they're doing in the end. So I feel like it reframes like communication as like an equity issue. Like if the teacher only understands the goal, the students are like kind of like blind and like they don't really know exactly like what they're doing, and we're kind of just like, I'm just doing whatever my teacher tells me to do. Like no, like I kind of want you to understand like, this is the point of why I'm learning is because of this. And then I kind of feel like I feel like if I think about like the assignments I had where everything kind of felt like vague and confusing, that frustration came from like unclear and poorly communicated targets. Like when I was like doing like, let's say I was like going home doing homework and I would get like super frustrated over my homework, like, dang, why am I even learning about this? Why am I even doing this? I know as a teacher, I don't want my students to feel like that at all. I want them to feel like, I'm learning this because it ties into what I'm going to do for the next lesson or what we're going to do in the next unit. And then I feel like the challenge is really real, like rewriting standards into plain language without watering them down. Like that's really, I feel like it's going to be really hard for us as teachers, like, trying to get our students to understand what learning outcomes are and how that's going to help them and transform their learning. And I feel like I like appreciate the emphasis on like examples and just, giving kids examples of like what they're going to be learning before, we introduce the topic to them also might help a lot.
Okay, Nylan, that was great. And I really did agree with what you're talking about where they go home and they're frustrated with the work. It's really important for students to know how to do it outside of the classroom, outside of being with their teachers. But I did have a question for y'all. I want to know, do y'all think one category of learning targets is more important than the rest, or do you think they need to all work collectively for each student? And in my opinion, I think they all need to work collectively because it's like, okay, you have the facts, but you can't connect it to real world, or you have the facts and you can't do it without help, like you were just saying. So I definitely think that all of them together is very important to get our students to the goal they need to be at.
Yes, I agree with you. I think all of them together is extremely important because, like you were saying, like if it's just on the board, the students probably won't read it and then they don't understand it. So it's very important for the teacher to be able to connect it to something in their life so that they can make a connection to it and remember it when it's time for them to be assessed. So I agree with you. Okay, I have a question. What are some ways that you guys are going to teach your students how to think critically? Like I was going to use like open-ended questions so that it's not like a A, B, C, D type of answer, or like using graphic organizers so that they have to reflect back on their thinking, or like writing essays in elementary school. I probably have them write paragraphs instead, but like things like that so they can learn how to analyze information and come up with their own ideas. What do you guys think?
I think like in elementary school, when I was first introduced to like a Socratic seminar, I was so obsessed with it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I love debate and I love being able to communicate with my students and, or not communicate with my students, but communicate with my peers. And we have different opinions and things like that. So I think like using, like, I think open-ended questions, like you said, Kennedy, and then also, kind of like having them, have different opinions and kind of teaching them how to, how to not really debate, I guess, but like how to kind of communicate with each other in like a scholastic, like effective way. Like if they do have different opinions, like how can we all, communicate and get our points across in a like effective kind of manner. I love it. And I think that that's probably something that I would try to include in my classroom.
I agree with both of you guys, Kennedy, with the open-ended questions. I also thought about like solving word problems and stuff as a class. And then I think it kind of piggybacks off you, Nylan, like asking like a question and getting everyone's viewpoints on the class on that specific question to kind of see the process of opinions and everything.
Okay, so awesome. So I have a question too. So like how can which one of these should I pick? So like how do you guys like in your classrooms, because I know we're gonna, like the standards for all of us to have like our learning outcomes posted on the walls for our kids and things like that. So like how are we as teachers going to really know or like understand if students really understand like their learning targets? And I feel like for me as a teacher, like the way I'm going to try to help my kids to kind of understand like, oh, what a learning target is and like, how are we going to use it in the classroom and not kind of have them see it as, oh, just words on the board. Oh, excuse me, words on the board. It's just like, going over it every single time, like we're every day before we get into the lesson, kind of helping them understand, okay, so somebody tell me what our learning target is today, telling us what we're trying to learn today, maybe even changing it up every day so then they know like, okay, so at the end of this lesson of this unit, I'm the purpose of me learning today is for, I'm trying to figure out what I don't know. I keep on relating y equals mx plus b, but I'm just obsessed with it. Why we use y equals mx plus b and why that connects to slope. So I think that's kind of how I would try to get my kids to understand learning targets. How would you guys kind of introduce it to your kids?
Okay.
I definitely agree with you. Oh, sorry, Trinity. You want to
No,
go?
it's okay. You can go ahead.
Okay. I definitely agree with you. I would definitely have them like read it or like recite it before we start the lesson, just so they know what it's about. And then I would break it down even more. Like usually the learning target will have vocabulary words in it, so I'll make sure they know the vocab and how it applies to the unit. And then also I would just assess them in different ways. So I might give like a project and then like a quiz or an exit ticket, so they have different ways to show what they know. And if they can at least like show their knowledge through one of those ways, because I know everybody's not a good test taker, everybody doesn't like projects, they have at least different options. So if they can show their knowledge in one of those ways, then I'll know that they understand the learning target.
I'm actually really glad that you asked that question, Nyland, because I feel like something that I guess I need to work on as an educator is letting them know these things without just saying it, like actually giving them ways to be involved in it and learn it and really like soak it in. So what y'all said about asking them throughout the day, like making sure they know it, make sure that we have it on the walls, making sure they see it, and it's just kind of ingrained in them. I feel like those are really good ideas. Oh, and I'm sorry for Kennedy, for the question you asked. That was also a really great question. My mind had just gone blank for a second. But I agree with Nyland about the Socratic seminars because I used to love those too in school, especially in high school, where it's like everyone, their opinions are just so different. But I also feel like sometimes putting kids in that spot makes them a little anxious to actually do so. And then it's like there are people that are kind of falling behind, the people that are not so outspoken. So in our ELED 216 class with Dr. Long, what she has us do is we work in a group and then we present out loud. So it's like we're kind of getting some of everyone's ideas, but you don't have to be, I guess, put on the spot to speak. So I feel like that's also a really good way for them to learn how to critically think.
I agreed with, well, I'm going back to Madeline's question. I agree with everything you guys said. Also, like having it like big and bold and colorful in the front of the classroom so that way students notice it. And then maybe, I don't know if they still do this in school, but like I know in our school we used to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And then after the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe go over those learning targets. So that way it becomes a repetition thing and then they understand and get to know it.
Okay, does anybody else have any more comments? Okay, perfect. Thank you guys so much for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you in the next one.
Okay.